We left the last episode riding over the Severn Bridge back into England after 30 episodes covering Wales. It was opened in 1966 and is often referred to as the first Severn crossing because it was the first of the two road bridges, both of which operate today. The second Severn crossing opened in 1996. But it wasn't the first way of crossing the Severn estuary. That accolade goes to the ferry that dates back to Roman times and was eventually forced into retirement by the opening of this bridge. That's not the end of the story though, because there have been two other crossings before this bridge, one of which is still in use today. Quite a way upstream, but still within the tidal limits of the Severn between Lydney and Sharpness, there was once a railway bridge. It opened in 1879. In 1960 it was struck by two barges and partially collapsed. There was a plan to rebuild it, but shortly before work commenced, another vessel struck the bridge and the decision was made to demolish it instead. Then there is the Severn Tunnel. It was opened in 1886 and still just about operates today. We'll take a look at the tunnel and what's left of the ferry on the Aust side shortly. Before then, we have to talk about the Severn View services. Much like the bridge, the services are an iconic legacy from the early days of the motorway network. The services were commissioned to complement the bridge. Both achieved a practical, modern solution without compromising style and experience. Just like the bridge, it opened in 1966 as Aust services and was operated by Top Rank. As well as the fantastic view of the estuary and the bridge, the services provided a restaurant, cafe, a separate transport cafe and a coffee bar. There were 140 toilets and 750 parking spaces. For many years it was the UK's largest restaurant. Unfortunately, the ambitious design was its Achilles heel. It rarely got anywhere near its 1,000 seating capacity. The large foyer and multi-level design was expensive to maintain. People were more interested in the view than the building or the food on offer. With the opening of the second Severn crossing, which now carried the majority of traffic, the main services building and car park closed in 1999 and relocated to the Truckers Cafe and car park where it still operates today. In 1999, I popped into the services on my Yamaha Thundercat and ended up sitting at the window reading Carl Fogarty's biography for a few hours. Little did I know, within a few weeks it would be closed.
Yeah. Well, I used to have a ride along there back in the day, and they've turned their back on us, haven't they? They don't want no entry. Used to be able to go down there as well. Why is that no entry? That's the old ferry place, isn't it?
We are trying and failing to go along two very short stretches of coast road that lead to where the Severn Ferry used to be on the English side. I spoke briefly about the ferry earlier. It's a fascinating story. Before the Severn Bridge was opened in 1966, the ferry was the quickest way to cross the river from England to Wales. The alternative was a 60-mile detour via Gloucester that took 2.5 hours. It took only 15 minutes to sail across the estuary, but with the coming of the M4 motorway, there was no need for the ferry that had dated back to Roman times, and it sadly closed the day before the bridge opened. The three boats, the Severn Queen, King and Princess, blew their horns for the last time as Queen Elizabeth II opened the new bridge. Afterwards they promptly headed for an uncertain future. The Queen and King were scrapped, but the Princess was sold and operated in Ireland for many years. People remember the ferry crossing fondly, recalling how hazardous the short passage was and how tough, skillful and helpful the men who operated it were. The boats were unique in that they had ramps on their sides, not on the bow or stern. This was because the tide would deliver the boats side on to the landing stages. It was a short but difficult route to sail across the ever-changing tides. Because the ferries had to cope with tidal ranges of up to 13 metres, they had no keel, which made it easier to cope with the lowest of the tides, but this also made them more difficult to steer. The cars would be squeezed on by the crew so tight that the doors couldn't be opened, making it difficult if the occupants had to escape. Despite the treacherous river, appalling weather and what would now be deemed a health and safety nightmare, no passengers were ever killed or seriously injured between 1926 and 1966 while it was operated by the old Passage Severn Ferry Company. The Severn Princess was found in 1999 abandoned in Ireland and half full of mud. She was brought back to Chepstow, where she has been under restoration ever since. It wasn't uncommon for the ferry to carry well-known people. Before opening the bridge, even the Queen used the ferry. But the ferry became particularly well known for carrying music artists on tour. A gig in Bristol was usually followed by a gig in Cardiff. The Beatles and Tom Jones have been among its famous passengers. In 2005, a Martin Scorsese film about the life of Bob Dylan featured the folk legend waiting for the ferry in the rain on the film poster and soundtrack album art. The photo was taken on May the 11th, 1966, just months before the historic ferry closed for good. He was having a bad day for a number of reasons, not least because the previous night he had been booed for using electric guitars and rock drums during his gig at the Bristol Colston Hall. The ferry terminal in Aust is now deserted and derelict. The two bridges today carry upwards of 25 million vehicles per year.
I think you can turn right. No, yes you can. Try it from the other end.
If you've been watching this series, you may have noticed how I don't like to admit defeat. We made an episode 81A because I had to go back and conquer an overgrown footpath. Don't worry, there's not going to be an 83A, but I have to stop editing right now for us to get back on the bike and see if Passage Road and Aust Wharf Road are open.
So this is a lovely road that runs down the side of the Severn Estuary. Might be open, might not. Go and have a look. They've been doing some work here recently. Very pretty. Looks promising. That's the second Severn crossing over the River Severn, and if I turn the camera around, should be able to see the first. Lovely evening. Van lifers. They pop up on all our travels.
Shaft Road. It's down here, isn't it? Okay. Named Shaft Road because there's a railway tunnel that goes underneath us, pretty much where we are. Believe it or not, I think this rough bit of road here is probably our best bet. Off you get then. Whew. So hot. I think that's the shaft for the railway tunnel, or shafts should I say, which I think gives its name to the road. Shaft Road. And as you go up here, you emerge on this lovely footpath. I was going to say little known, it's known, but quite often very few people use it. Look at this, a fantastic footpath. You can use a bicycle on it if you want, but look at that, unfortunately no motorcycles. And here you get a good view of 3 bridges actually. So the one that you can see right in front of us is, well, it was called the second Severn crossing for many years, because it's the newer of the bridges. But it's actually called the Prince of Wales Bridge. And then if you look into the distance, there's 2 other bridges you can see. The one you can see all of it is actually the bridge over the Wye that I was explaining earlier. When you're on the first Severn crossing, you just feel like you're continually going over the same bridge, but actually you go over 2 bridges. And the one that you can see half of is the first Severn crossing, which is a suspension bridge. Now the best bridge to drive or ride across, in my opinion anyway, has to be the old Severn Bridge, and the reason for that is it doesn't have these barriers. So these barriers have been put up to deflect the wind, so you don't get blustered or blown around nearly as much on this bridge as you do on the old one. So it can also stay open on very windy days, whereas the old bridge has to close. And the reason for that, this is a cable stayed bridge, it's not going to get blown around by the wind, whereas the old bridge is a suspension bridge, and actually the wind will buffet it and actually make it swing. Although that said, it would make it swing if it had wind brakes on it to act like sails, and so it can't have those. Ooh. Oyster catchers I believe. I don't know for certain, but Esther will know. I think, oops, a bit slippy. I think we're going to have to get the drone. It's got to be. you're looking for a beach to chill out on, no, it's a no. It's just some, yeah, there's no real beach here as such, but if you're looking for a walk along the estuary, it's absolutely wonderful. And it's up there, but we've just been up there when we were at the bridge, so we probably won't bother going up there again. On the sea wall, lovely walk, and you get the seaside of Avonmouth as well. We should do it again soon, perhaps on a bicycle or something, because I think you can cycle it all, and of course you can take the train back. Yeah, it must be one of the most bizarre lines that didn't get axed by the Beeching cuts in the 60s. And I understand that was because they were very passionate about it, and they campaigned, and the government relented. And there it is, Severn Beach, but it is a line just to this. I mean, it's not even a town, it's a village.
In the 1960s, more or less half of Britain's railway lines and infrastructure was lost on the recommendation of the government and Dr. Richard Beeching, then chair of the British Railways Board. The story of how the Severn Beach line escaped the Beeching Axe is exceptional. Staff and passengers simply refused to accept the closure, and their persistence paid off. On one occasion, when they rejected the Temple Mead station master telling them the line had to close, he stormed out of the meeting in a rage. There's plenty more to this story, including how Chris Green, a 15-year-old from Shirehampton, chartered private excursion trains from here in the 1980s. There were trips to locations throughout the UK, including London, Edinburgh, North Wales, Chester, the Lake District, Nottingham, and even Boulogne in France.
Yeah, and it's just a dead end. And yet, another track not too far away from here to Porter's Head, that got axed well and truly. Despite it serving industry and remaining open for a while to serve that industry, it got axed. But this survived it. It was the line that survived the beaching cuts. Quite unusual, really. But it's a lovely line because it goes along the Severn Estuary. Unfortunately, we have to go on this A road.
That's it for this episode. Hopefully it doesn't feel like we're dragging our heels. I guess as I edit the episodes nearer to home, I have more to tell you about. Join us next time to see how far we get.